Good morning. I'm going to try to share this morning about topic of our words, our speech. There's some reason that I thought of Joseph. You heard the expression, Joseph, watch your mouth. That's something that people would have just thrown around, watch your mouth. But a watch, biblically what a watch is what we would maybe call like guards. Guys that would stand outside the door and in a violent sense be willing to prevent somebody or something from entering in or going out. You had to get through the guards. Be able to get in, and that's called a watch. I think they'd also call it a watch when you stay up all night watching to make bad guys aren't coming to invade your camp or your city. So we need to watch our mouths. It needs to be, let's see. Psalm 141 verse 3 says, "Set a watch, O Lord, before my mouth. Keep the door of my lips." Your lips are like a door. And things come in and out of the doors, and one of the things that can come out of the door of your mouth is words. Maybe that's the only thing that comes out. Well, never mind. And we want to. There needs to be like little guards there that are watching the words that are going to come out, like little soldiers, and there's certain words that might want to come out of our mouths, and the little soldiers should say no. That shouldn't come out. And if somebody is endeavoring to follow God, these days we'd call those kind of people Christians. It's our duty. It's our job. It's something we signed up for. It's something that we absolutely must do, and we must take it very seriously. I'm going to read, I think it's the whole chapter, James chapter 3. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body. Behold, we put bits in horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold also the ships, which though they be so great, and are driven of fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. For every kind of beast, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind, but the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Therewith bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be. Doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh. Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. But if ye have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not, and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But the wisdom that is from above is pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. I think there at the end, all of these general principles are still wanting to be applied to our words. Our words should be peaceful and full of good fruits and gentle and so forth. I tried to read that clearly. I don't know if you were able to pay attention. There are enormous things here that are said about our words, and how important it is that we keep them. And distinguishing the difference between the wisdom that is from above and the wisdom that is natural and earthly. I'll read a few more scriptures to try to, Proverbs 21:23. Whoso keepeth his mouth and tongue keepeth his soul from troubles. There's a couple of points I'm really wanting to bring out here, and one of them is that our mouth is something that should be kept. There should be a watch. There should be carefulness. If we're not doing that, we're failing to do something that we must do. He that keepeth, Proverbs 13, verse 3. He that keepeth his mouth keepeth his life, but he that openeth wide his lips shall have destruction. Proverbs 10, verse 19. In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. The tongue of the just is as choice silver. The heart of the wicked is little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for want of wisdom. Proverbs 18, verse 20. A man's belly shall be satisfied with the fruit of his mouth, and with the increase of his lips shall he be filled. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. The heart of the wise teacheth his mouth, and addeth learning to his lips. Pleasant, that was Proverbs chapter 16, verse 23. The next verse says, pleasant words are as an honeycomb, sweet to the soul, and health to the bones. In the first chapter of James, verse 26, it says, if any man among you seem to be religious, and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is vain. Words are a big deal. In the scriptures, they are likened to things such as poison, swords, and arrows. They can do much damage and harm. They're powerful, and I mean these every one of us, to the littlest of us, have mouths, and at an early age we develop a grasp for a language, and I mean it's like little children walking around with swords and arrows that they can just shoot off any time. So I want to make a point of saying that there's something that's being alluded to here when it says that we're supposed to keep the words of our mouth. That means the scriptures say that out of the heart is where words come from, and so this is indicating, and it's saying that, and these are instructions to the man of God or the woman of God. So somebody who loves God and is serving God can have things in their heart that shouldn't come out of their mouths, and that's part of it. I kind of want to address, there's a false doctrine that comes up often that says when people, there's different names and descriptions of it, but that when somebody's converted, when they're saved, when they're born again, they're given a new heart, and you're just filled with the Spirit. And if that were the truth, then we could just say everything that came to our heart. We could just do everything that we wanted to do, but it's not true. The heart that changes when we're converted and give ourselves to God. Excuse me, is the heart of recognizing that, but before we didn't recognize that God was Lord and we're his servant, and now we do. And we want to fix that. We want to serve him, and we want to make up for that. And so we develop the heart of a servant who's trying to submit and obey and bring forth the fruit. I should go slower. Bring forth the fruit that he wants us to bring forth. So this is the new heart that we have, but I don't think it's true that upon conversion there's just nothing bad in us anymore. But rather we have a heart that's now at war against those bad things out of love for God. Okay. So our new heart is a heart that's now signed up to run a race. Like, we didn't realize there was a race before, and now we know that there's a race, and we're signed up. We're going to run that race. We're committed to producing fruit for him. We recognize, oh, I'm like a laborer in his vineyard, and I've been denying him his fruit. I'm not going to do that anymore. I want to give him his fruit. This is his vineyard. And we commit to producing fruit, producing profit for our master. Oh, I'm his servant. He's the master. I want to give him I want my actions to bring forth profit for him. And so this is likened to steering a ship or steering a horse or cultivating a garden or investing our talents, recognizing that our mouths are his vineyard. So it's his vineyard, so the fruit that comes out of our mouths is, he tells us what kind. Weeds can come out, all thorns can come out, but we see what he wants. And he tells us what kind of fruit that should come out, and we submit to that because we recognize that it's his, it's not ours. We're in control of it, but we use our control to make it do what the things that he wants. It's become socially acceptable for people to just confidently say things like, "Oh, I'm just a sarcastic person. That's just how I am. Oh, I'm just rough around the edges. That's just the way I am." Some people are real gracious and real kind and care, but I'm just not like that. I just say it how it is. And it's something people can boast in, and it's just so like, oh yeah, that's how they are, and we just love them anyway. But that's not okay. Like we signed up when we signed up to be with God to recognize that those are things that are in every one of us, and we're not just going to be that kind of person, but rather we're going to be conformed into a new person. We're gonna fix up this garden. It's a shame too, because the world thinks it's okay to do that as well. So there are many ways to communicate the same things, maybe infinite, I don't know. And God cares about our word choices. And it's not something that's just going to happen. It requires effort. It's a grand, lifelong commitment to a labor, to sculpting our speech. It's not... Excuse me. It's not fake. It's not being fake. To be careful, we read all those scriptures. You saw there that the wise man, the godly man, he keeps his words. He's not being fake. He's just not being a fool. He's being careful with what he lets out. There's little guards there making sure, like, is this going to be helpful? Is this is this going to create more problems than it needs to? Like, we should be putting forth much effort and care into what comes out and how it comes out. Is there a better way to say that? Is there a more fruitful way to say that? Am I just letting my heart spew stuff out without checking it? I wish I had but as I imagine sharing this, I would have liked to have had like a pretty good list of examples of ways that I've learned that that society naturally talks and that I have and that I naturally talk that I've recognized and found like that is just not a good way to respond or react, or when somebody says something that I disagree with, this natural way to respond is wrong. I don't want to respond that way, and it can be really tricky because we don't. These are subtle things. These are things maybe that we don't see, and these are things that still get practiced among God's people, and so. This is something I put a lot of thought into, and I'm on the lookout for hearing unkindnesses or recognizing them. It's always easier to see other people doing stuff wrong than yourself, but this is something I want us to be working on, looking for these things and trying to change them. I can be in a state of trying to be careful with what I say, but if I don't recognize that something is wrong, then I might say it anyway. So first you have to want to do the right thing, and then you have to learn what's not right and what is and isn't right. But I wish I would have had a list. It was as I was trying to think of a list, it was pretty difficult for me to try to formulate it. But I'll say this, that these improper ways of communicating that I would have liked to have had a list of usually involved sarcasm. Probably sarcasm would be like Roman numeral 1, and then there'd be a bunch of examples. So probably the examples that I would want to think of would just be examples of the use of sarcasm or hyperbole, which is like making these a big extreme statement to make a point. Often we use this sarcasm because we're offended, and we want to try to hurt the other person or make somebody's position look dumb, make someone feel stupid or ashamed. If we believe somebody's position or their actions are shameful, think of parents, your child does something that it's shameful, there's different ways to show them that their actions are shameful. Now, when and we should carefully and gently lead them to see that their actions are shameful, not shame them. Like we can see that they should feel ashamed, but the wrong path is to shame them, and the right path is to gently help them to see, like, you don't want it. Can you see how you're doing this? And you don't want it. Do you see how that looks to other people? And you wouldn't want somebody else to see you doing that, would you? Or it's mostly a matter of caring, loving, and being careful. As I imagine like theatrically trying to give an example of the wrong way to tell somebody something, and then the gracious way. But I might not be able to do that. But gently, carefully leading someone to see that. We need to be sensitive. We need to not be harsh. It's not okay to just. I've seen old videos of myself dealing with my children, and I'm ashamed at how harsh I've been to them and just like, especially the little ones, they're so sensitive, and just roughly throwing commands at them and not being sensitive. And it's just something we grow in, but we don't want to be harsh. Don't pick on people. It's real easy for friends to pick on each other, and then but it's also really easy to think you're better friends with somebody than you really are, and just be picking on them in a friendly way and hurt their feelings. And we don't. I would recommend just don't pick on people. Young people especially, you just shouldn't. Don't pick on somebody. If one of your friends has a problem, don't tease them about it. Just don't, ever. Like, that is just something we shouldn't do. Don't tease your friends. Don't pick on people. Don't, even if it's just a little bit, just friendly, because you always do that thing wrong, and it's just a little thing, and it's not that important, but I would suggest don't do it. Don't boast. It can be really easy when we're describing a situation to just casually throw in there that you're responsible for such and such, or you're the one who did such and such. Just learn to leave that out when you're describing something. Leave out your any boasting. Also, learn to leave out others' faults. If somebody breaks something and somebody says, "What happened?" you don't have to say, "So-and-so broke the thing." You can just say, "Oh, we have a break over here. We broke something." To be careful that it's going to hurt somebody's feelings if it's not necessary to just like throw in who's responsible for something or some fault that somebody has. Like, be careful. If it's not necessary, there's no need. It's a blessing to cover up little things like that. I wrote guilt trip down here. Don't put guilt trips on people. I think in general, the thing that has helped me is just to recognize that like these subpoints under sarcasm of ways that I was brought up learning how to talk or argue. Typically, they're not saying what I mean. It's like sideways, sarcastic way of making a point. And the solution I found is just to say what I really mean. And it's pretty bad when I have to take and interpret my own thoughts, my own manner of communication, because the thing coming out of me is just not really saying what I want. It's saying the opposite, or sarcasm, or something that's supposed to bring a point across. And I just think it's better to just learn to say what you mean. I'm at war with sarcasm in my own life. I try to, if you hear me being sarcastic, I'd appreciate you pointing it out to me. I try to, as soon as I realize I've said it, I'll just say that's sarcasm. Like I want to perfect my speech. Somebody said recently that by perseverance one can overcome nature. What was that? Is that the last meeting? No. Oh. Who was that? Okay, by perseverance, one can overcome. You said even nature. And I was thinking, oh yeah, that's the flesh. Ways of communicating that are fine with the world and totally acceptable. Now we view these things as weeds. We want to rid the garden of our speech of weeds. We want to be sure that there's no unkindness. Especially when we're offended, it can be easy to sculpt our words in a way that makes somebody look bad. Sometimes, so these are things we have to exercise ourselves in. We should be, but if you're not already, get to exercising, get to learning, get to a place where you're not just saying whatever pops into your head, but you are taking the things that you make make it your habit that the things that come to your head or come to your heart, that there's a watch. And you're being careful how you're changing how you say it. You're maybe just not saying it. This should be how we communicate. So a thing that has happened to me often, if somebody's speaking in an unkind way toward me, the solution I have is to translate what they're saying. Sometimes somebody can be unkind. It can make me either want to be unkind back or to just not deal with them. But what we need to do, and something I've practiced, is to translate what they say and to take the meanness out and see the point they're making, see what they're feeling, see what they're thinking, see what they want, and answer them back as though they said it nicely. Everybody knows it's easier to receive criticism from somebody who's being careful with their words and meek than somebody that's insulting you. And so you try to be sure that if we're bringing forth criticism to somebody, that we're doing it carefully and meekly. And if somebody else is not, take the effort. The little guards can hear that and pretend like they're translating it to you, like as though he said it nicely. Someone said it nicely. But sometimes I can be so overwhelmed by somebody's rudeness that I am rendered incapacitated. There have been many times somebody's being mean to me, and I just cannot believe how rude and unkind somebody's being, and I can't think, and I'll just sit there in silence. And this would be like a weight that's just too big for me. I can't lift this. And I don't know how the allegory would be to entering back into entering into being mean back to them, or pointing out someone else's faults or somebody's inconsistencies, or, oh yeah, well, you such and such, you do such and such, or something like that. I had a dear friend, the end of high school and the beginning of college. His name was Bob, still is. And one time, I don't remember the details, but something happened and we were real offended at each other. And I think one of us had a secret and the other one found out. I can't remember exactly what it was, but we were very emotional, very upset. For sure one of us was. And we sat at a table, and I don't know how long it was. We might have sat at that table for an hour. Maybe it was only half an hour. But we just sat there in silence because we loved each other so much. Neither of us was willing to say anything unkind to the other person. And all we had was unkindness in our hearts toward each other, and so we sat there in silence because we were unwilling to say the unkind things that we were thinking. And eventually we just realized, like, we're just going to have to talk about this later. And we just said, let's get out of here. We'll talk about this later. Let's just get out of here. And we just had to ignore it for a little while because we were so emotional and full of hurt. To me, it's one of my favorite stories. I mean, I just think that the love that man and I had for each other, that was a big deal to me. Anyway, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. That's a good one. So be willing to do that. Not say anything sometimes. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. I'm sure we could probably all share a story about a time. I've had times when somebody comes at me very aggressively, and I translate it in my head and just smile and pretend like they're not being rude, and sometimes they'll say something else, and eventually they'll calm down. I've seen it work. I've seen it not work before too. I've seen somebody just keep on being unkind. Proverbs 12 verse 16 says, "A fool's wrath is presently known, but a prudent man covereth shame." Both, I think it's describing two men who have the same feelings, the same thoughts, and the same ideas. One, the fool presently makes it known, but a prudent man knows that it would be a shame to do that, and he covers it. A wise man learns that he should watch his mouth and learns what to watch for, taking the time and putting forth the effort. When we're talking about something, or having an argument, is it your job to win the argument? Your goal? Is it your goal to win the argument or to be fruitful? How can I use my words in a way to bring forth fruit, and not just win the argument? This will be out of place here, but I've seen on a shirt that someone in the world would proudly wear and think is funny and cute. It says, "I love sarcasm. It's like punching someone in the face with words." I mean, the world recognizes that's what sarcasm is. That's what it does, and they're just like, yeah, that's what I do. And it's what we should not do. Proverbs 12, verse 18. "There is that speaketh like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is health." I saw a man give an illustration. I didn't see the first part, but I think this is like wise grandpa trying to teach his grandchildren, and he writes some stuff on some pieces of wood and has these girls, I guess maybe they got into an argument or something, and he had them pound a bunch of nails. So imagine like two 2x4s here with just like all these nails stuck in it. And he's like, okay, those are the hurtful things that you said. Now pull them out. Excuse me. Pull them out. And every time you pull a nail out, I want you to say sorry. Sorry. I'm sorry I said that. I'm sorry I said that. I'm sorry I said that. I'm sorry. Okay, it's all good. There's no more nails in the wood now. It's all fixed, right? But if I held up that piece of wood, you'd see it got hurt. We can say sorry and we can pull nails out, but our words do damage. Don't let them out. Like you can apologize and you can fix things, but it's better to just never let them come out. Be careful if we're offering criticism. If you enter into a disagreement, you're entering into a battle. And the goal is not to win. The goal is to win someone over to your position without inflicting harm. Which, honestly, when somebody starts trying to insult somebody else, it's because they're actually losing the argument of what the substance is that they're really talking about. If someone else is wrong and you want them to change their position, as we all know, changing your position can be painful. So you have to if you win this argument, it's going to create pain. Just the fact that somebody has to change their mind is going to be painful for them. You don't want to add anything to that. You don't want any of your harsh words or something to get in the way of that. You're trying to lead them to a painful place to accept, whether it's your child or someone that you meet. One example that I think I can maybe get across is like somebody makes a point and it's a bad point, and so a common thing to do is to take that point to its extreme and say, for some reason it was very difficult for me to try to think of practical examples, but if somebody says it's okay to buy a certain thing that you don't think is good to buy. Sorry, this is a bad example. And so what you think is that's not a good thing to buy. But the natural way to respond is, oh yeah, well let's just go out and buy a bunch of those. Oh yeah, it's fine to buy apparently, so let's all just buy a bunch. And what you believe is, surely that when I present it in this way, surely that person will see like, oh, maybe that would be bad. But you want them to get them to see that, but this tactic that commonly gets used is, I think one time I specifically remember I used that. I was trying to convey to someone how important it is to eat healthy, and they were saying like, they said, oh, it's not what goes into the man that defiles a man, but what comes out. And I was like, okay, well, let's just go out and buy some crack cocaine, and because it doesn't matter what goes in, right? Like just trying to make that the point they were using. Say, I hurt his feelings. It was very unfriendly. Anyway, we don't want to use that tactic. We should say, you can communicate the same points more carefully. Like if someone says it's okay to buy this thing, and you're like, well, here's a better example. Somebody says it's okay to do this thing, and you could sarcastically, hurtfully say like, oh yeah, well, why don't I just go get some for your children then? Where the truth is, we think, oh, if it there's been a time when I believed in doing something, and then somebody said, oh, are you going to teach your children to do that? And I was like, oh, that just should put a whole new light on it. Like, well, obviously not. And if it's not okay for my children, then how can it be okay for me? But there'd be a kind and gentle way to try to express to somebody. Well, consider if your children were to do that. How would you feel about that? As opposed to just like, oh yeah, well, why don't you just? I mean, there's just that's an example, but there's other ways that we do that we should be on the lookout for. Matthew chapter 12, verse 35 says, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure bringeth forth evil things. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. Psalm chapter 19, verse 14. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Colossians chapter 4, verse 6. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man. Ephesians 4, verse 29. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace to the hearers. It should just be really clear, like your mouth can be like arrows, swords, poisons, or it can be life, health, healing. Then it's a powerful thing. And if the warning there is that there are corrupt communications that can want to come out of our mouths, and it's an essential. It's not extra. This isn't just. If we're failing to do this, we're failing. Our religion is vain. Steering our vessel, sculpting our clay, weeding our garden, carefully, intentionally. It's not just going to happen. If we're not doing this, we're failing. It's not an extra thing, an additional good little thing. It is an essential thing. We have the potential to be walking around shooting little arrows. We can have a sentence that we're saying, and in that little sentence is a little arrow we shot off and got somebody or got our hearer or something, and we don't want that. That is all I think I'll share right now. I'd be glad for any corrections or clarifications. Clarifications, or additions.
Thank you, brother. That was a real blessing. I really appreciated that. It's one of those topics that just never gets old. Like you could it should never get old. I was considering if if you could have Bible topics on your phone, that should be on your main screen. Anyways, yeah, God help us. I think over the years, I mean, this is something that I've really meditated on for a lot of years and tried to work on in my own life for a lot of years. And I always focused on the words and my mouth, but I think the real victory is focusing on the heart and your mind. If you get your heart right, then your words will be right. It's just the root of the matter. Recently, my brother was doing some Ancestry.com stuff and looking at things in our family tree, and I've never done that, but it is kind of neat to know some of the lineage of your family. And he had come across one of our grandfathers who was in the army, and he was set on a watch, and he was supposed to stay awake on the watch, and he fell asleep. And the Indians, they stole all his guns. And anyways, long story short, the punishment for falling asleep on a watch is death, or it was in this country. That's how serious it is. If you fall asleep and you're in charge of watching, you're worthy of death. And we should really consider that when it comes to our words. Like it is that serious. Like your words can really do that type of damage. Your words can do such a serious damage to somebody else that how does God look at it? Like I think God thinks of it as a serious thing when we do that, when we wound somebody with our words. And I don't think he doesn't cause us to die or anything, but I think it's a very serious offense to him, and we should really consider that, and we should keep our mouth with a bridle and just really study to not let any kind things out of our mouth. And but there is hope, there is grace, there is truth, and I appreciate you sharing those verses. There's a lot of really, really good instruction there, and pray God I could lay hold of that myself, and just really appreciated that. Thank you.
Yeah, I too just want to say thank you. I was both very blessed, very convicted, and just as Teo said, like this is one of those topics we should be hearing over and over again. And the tongue, according to James, is like a fire, and fire when it's in control is a necessity. It is warming. I don't in many parts of the world, man couldn't survive without fire, I don't think. It is very needful, and we would suffer from hunger and cold if there was no such thing as fire. But a fire out of control is so devastating and so destruction, and so is the tongue, so is words. I like little sayings, little quotes. You talked about how we need to get rid of the weeds. Came across a quote recently and said, "It is not enough for the gardener to love flowers, he must also hate weeds." Another quote I thought fit in well is, "Rudeness is the weak person's imitation of strength." Appreciated what you said about the false idea of that. A part of the false gospel is like, if you get this heart change, nothing bad will ever come out, and not taking away that we definitely need a heart change. But I think the heart change has to do with Not that means there will never be anything there that we have to guard against coming out. It just, as you pointed out, it will. But our attitude changes towards those watchmen, those watchers. Like, instead of ignoring them, we give them very special honor or credit for their position, and we like that's what a heart that's one of the things that a heart change is. Like, we get on the right side of the battle. We get on the, as Paul said, I have fought. He didn't say I fought the fight good. He said I fought the good fight. He was on the right side of the battle. And wanted to share a little poem, just 3 verses. It's an old poem written around the 1900s. Maybe many of you have come across it already, but I just thought it really fit in here. If you are tempted to reveal a tale someone has told about another, make it pass before you speak 3 gates of gold. 3 narrow gates. First, is it true? Then, is it needful in your mind? Give truthful answers. Then the next, if last and narrowest, is it kind? And if to reach your lips at last it passes through these gateways 3, then you may tell the tale nor fear what the result of speech may be. If you are tempted to reveal a tale someone to you has told about another, make it pass before you speak 3 gates of gold. Oh. Is it true? Yeah. Is it true? Is it needful? And is it kind? Just one last thought. Like, yeah, this is an essential. Like, what would we say about someone who just continually violated the very basics of non-resistance? We would say he is not a Christian. Jesus spoke about this. The disciples spoke about this. It is essential. By our words we will be justified. By our words we will be condemned. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, I was very blessed as well. A lot of my points really got covered good in the comments, and I don't want to take away from that. Just a lot of time to think now, and for some reason, some of the big horses I used to have in the past that were fast and powerful came to my mind. Just one of the things we would do is, okay, so like it says here in James, how we can control a big horse by the bit in his mouth. And one of the things we would oftentimes do was to check those bits. Like, if perhaps one would break, usually they were two-piece bits or 3 or 4 pieces that wore, and if you work this horse daily, that it had the potential of breaking without you knowing how weak it was inside his mouth. So I remember one time a bit did break, and the outcome was very devastating. There was more than one horse involved because there was a team of 4 horses. There was a manure spreader involved, and there was life involved, and nothing just really drastically, happened. The horses ran into a tree and stopped there, but it all happened because the bit broke. And I don't know, maybe it's either me and my brother driving it, and I don't know for sure, but I think from there we kept checking the bits a little more, and I think that's a good life lesson, how in the spiritual kingdom, or in the kingdom of God, we need to check our bits more. And I was just blessed with it, and I was glad you brought out what I call the punchline there in Matthew 12. It's just so much in there that Jesus said, about by our words we will be justified, by our words we'll be condemned. Like, think of this as being thrown to the left or the right, and it's a pretty heavy thing if we think of it that way. Praise God. We can have victory, and we can grow in these things. I'm not sure how well this relates, but this morning as I was reading through. Well, actually, I was listening to a lot of it as well. Matthew 5 up through 10, and I tried to look at it in the light of pursuing, not really pursuing maybe perfection versus obedience, but I think I've found like something different or something very valuable in just having obedience in mind rather than a perfection. Those are scattered thoughts. I don't really have it collected that well, but I just thought that maybe at least at the moment I had some kind of revelation or peace about the fact that at the end or maybe as a whole, obedience is really what we're called to do. Perfection can't really be nailed down that well. That we should pursue it and it should be the end goal. But as we trudge through this life, I think obedience is really the main call. And so hopefully that fits in here somehow. God bless you all.
Yes, I have been really blessed too. A lot of thoughts go through my mind. Some of it that's like, this is something that I just hardly know how to cope with and deal with, and it seems like it eludes me to some degree, and then, well, just to be quiet and not say anything doesn't come out either. But I just seems like I find it hard within myself. I guess it's just kind of like a confession that I find it difficult to know. I like to think it's not one of my gifts, and I don't think it is, but that's no excuse of not watching our tongue, and it's so very important, so very far-reaching, but it's so easy to do it wrong, and I've not been able to get to the place of my heart's just so guarded that my tongue doesn't slip here and there, and maybe many times. People living around me probably would say many times. But I just really appreciate the encouragement to do that, and this is a very, I think Dwayne mentioned about we need to, there's truth, and then there's the kindness. We cannot be kind. We can be kind. Can we be kind to lies and deception and anyways, however that all comes out, to be kind and fruitful in our words is just probably, in my own opinion, one of my weakest areas that I wish I could be just very different. And then the challenge of, well, if the heart were different, then it wouldn't be that way. It makes one struggle, and that's probably good if we faint not. I'm not sure I'm making any sense, but I really appreciate it. May God bless us.
I know we don't necessarily need just one more comment, but I just wanted to express just that I really appreciated that message. It was inspiring to me. It was good. I liked your analogy of the wood with the nails pulled out that's nail-free but damaged nonetheless. I guess of talks that get given, my favorite talks, the ones that I find most to be spiritual meat, are the ones that are what I like to call where the rubber meets the road. Things that have good practical application. I'm not saying there's no place for the ones that seem to be more of an untangible nature, that are about things in the heavenlies that we can't quite see yet or grasp, but we want to experience. There's a place for those, but I just really like the really like the practical. I appreciated all the practical examples. I know Dwayne already commented on appreciating your thoughts about part of the false gospel and what that heart is like. That really resonated with me too, about a heart. The new heart that we're given is one that wants to be conformed to the image of Christ. You didn't put it that way, but that was kind of my takeaway. A heart that wants to war against the old man and strive to be the new man. I really liked that. And as I thought about it too, I think sometimes about what the epistles are. Like what are the epistles? James, for example, or the Pauline epistles to the different churches. And I find it interesting, I guess, in later years to look who it's addressed to. Like, for example, 1 Corinthians is addressed to the church at Corinth, but also all that in every place call upon the name of Jesus Christ. And James, in particular, is addressed to the 12 tribes dispersed. In other words, it's not to a specific group of people. In the epistles, I see that there's encouragement. I see encouragement given. I see expounding on the teachings of Christ. I see answers to questions that were in letters that we don't get to read, that didn't survive, but letters that were written to the apostles that the churches had that get addressed. But I also see, to Buddy's point, problems addressed within the churches. And if James was addressing his letter to be dispersed abroad to people everywhere, then it is not that there's not value in all the epistles for us, whether they're to a specific church or to Christians everywhere. It's a problem common to men everywhere. This problem of the tongue. It's something that we have to continually guard against and continually strive against. I just appreciate it, and thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank the Lord and thank you, Brother Buddy. I really blessed and convicted and appreciated it. Oh, I just feel like I failed so much in my life on this subject and still fail. Just, oh, what a wretch I am, I feel like. But again, thank you, and I just pray that the Lord help us all and me and to do better in this. Thank you.
Amen, Brother Buddy. And if we don't get convicted, something's the matter with us, like Teo and Walter and Dwayne and Max have said. If there's something the matter, if we don't get convicted of the abuse of the tongue. I appreciate your sensitivity for Bob. Okay, I don't know down in San Antonio, but when you just stood or you just sat quietly from each other, and that's, I also appreciate your sensitivity about comic books, how you said that it's poison trash, and I agree with you. My friend Maurice called you up the other day, and he said cartoons are trash and poison. I says, amen. The cartoons, they're sarcasm, they're mocking, and they should be avoided completely. Just a couple of comments in Proverbs. Don't answer a man according to his folly, because you'd be as foolish as him. And then it says, now answer a man according to his folly and reprove him. Something like, seems like an apparent contradiction, but it's not. Bear one another's burdens. And then Paul says in Galatians, bear your own burden. But it's not. It can be harmonized. And so, Jesus, he didn't speak to, the Pharisees or the scribes, but he spoke to Pilate. It depends on certain individuals. You can discern, are they worthy to be spoken to, or are they so far gone that you just be a fool by talking to them? One of the big things today, not a big thing today, it's probably been going on for 20 years, but I'm oblivious to it, is in the sports figures, they have what they call trash talk. Trash talk. It's just trash talk. I don't know if you young people, trash talk. They do it in basketball or football. Trash talk. And it's just complete sinful trash, poison, filth. It's something like when you get stopped at a green light, or your green light, and I know I deliver pizzas, and so I get all the time, I get stopped at a stop sign. So someone pulls up to me next in their vehicle with the windows down, And they play that rap music, and I get every filthy thing going in my ears for like 1 or 2 minutes. And trash talk is the same thing. The book that Leroy and Marilyn gave my wife, she read it to me last night, part of it, about the Amish man who rode a bike across the country. And he met one man, I don't know if you remember that, Leroy, but he met one man that, he was paralyzed, but then he was in a wheelchair, but he finally got healed. And then he said if he ever gets healed, he's going to ride a bike across the country and, proclaim the message of Jesus. He was the evangelical. But the man who wrote the book, Stutzman, is an Amish man from Holmes County. But the sign that the man had on his bicycle, or the thing, was a good one. It said, God's last name is not D, and it had blank, blank, blank. And I thought that is very appropriate, if you have a sign. God's last name is not D, blank, blank, blank. The Lord be magnified.
Yeah, that was really good. Just like words, we could use. And like Paul says, let all things be done for the building up. And words are almost like a tool, and it's like, you have one brother and another brother. A hammer might be good to replace tongue for in a certain situation. Like, we need to use our hammers to build bridges to each other, and it's hard to build a bridge by yourself. It is hard to do that. So it's like it takes two, to use their hammers properly to build a bridge. But I was really blessed by it, buddy. It was really good. Really good. Praise the Lord.
Yeah, Teo, I appreciate what you said about the heart. That's for sure it. I wish I had. If somebody outside the church were to watch that on the YouTube or whatever, I wish I had. I could see how somebody could easily get the idea that I didn't think that. But yeah, I had intended to say exactly what you said and then say, but in the meantime, as we're perfecting our hearts, because that is our ultimate goal. In the meantime, don't say. Be careful with your mouth. I'm glad, Robert, that you mentioned trash talk. That is a great example. I said boasting, but I think that's what it is. And I did remember one thing I did want to say, especially to the young men, how that I can remember there was a time in my youth when I just thought there were certain guys and they could always make funny little comments about something that happened or was getting said, and I remember just thinking, really admiring that and wanting to be, I wish I could think up funny little cute comments to say about things, and it was a goal of mine to make, if I could make a little comment and make people laugh, and if you thought of something but then somebody else said it, it was like, I should have spoke quicker or something. It was the goal was to be the first one to make the funny comment or whatever. And anyway, I'd really advise against such things. Trying to get noticed, saying things to get noticed or to make people laugh. Sometimes funny things just come to mind, but you don't have to. You don't have to share them, and I would say you even ought not to. I remember, so now I'm an old man, and I was talking about when I was a young man, but somewhere in the middle there, after I had figured this out, I remember feeling pretty good about myself when I'd think of the funny thing and not say it, and then somebody else would say it, and I felt like, oh yeah, I won and they lost, because I didn't say it.
Hey, decidido, seguir a Cristo. Hey, decidido, seguir a Cristo. Hey, decidido, seguir a Cristo. No matter what. Gloria, mi ha transformado.
fount.